Hello everyone, welcome back to intelKeen Skills. This is day 4 of our 30 days of code challenge, and today we are going to learn the difference between class and instance in Python. Before going to learn that, we need to understand what is object oriented programming in Python and what are the several pillars in object oriented programming with some code demos and the common mistakes that beginners do. Yeah. What is object oriented programming? It is a programming style where we organize our code around objects instead of only using functions and logics. What are objects? Objects are nothing but the data. And what are methods? Methods means the behavior of that particular function. Here, the four pillars of object oriented programming are encapsulation, abstraction, inheritance, and polymorphism. What is encapsulation? Encapsulation means building data and methods together inside a class. It also means we restrict data access to some data to protect it. Here, by using encapsulation, we can protect some data by not accessing by some other classes. Yeah. Think of like a capsule. Everything related stays inside that. That is what encapsulation means. What is abstraction? Abstraction means hiding complex details and showing only what is necessary. For example, when we drive a car, we use the steering wheel and pedals. But we don't need to know how the engine works internally, right? That is what the abstraction means. It won't show the complex details inside it. It just shows the necessary things. And what is inheritance? Inheritance allows one class to reuse properties and methods of another class. Here we have two types of classes, the parent class and the child class. The child class can access the properties of the parent class using that particular class name. That is called the inheritance means so that we no need of rewriting the code again and again, we can reuse the same logic that we have written in the parent class. What is polymorphism? Polymorphism means the same method name, different behavior. The same function can work differently depending on the object that calls it. That is all about the main pillars of object oriented programming. And now let's understand what is a class. Class is a fundamental building block of object oriented programming. It is also called a blueprint. Here, a blueprint is not a real house, it only defines how the house should look. In the same way, a class only defines the structure and rules, it does not store real data. And a class is a template for creating objects. It also defines what data the object will have and what actions it can perform. In Python, we define a class using the class keyword, and we usually write class names in Pascal case. Means this is the case. The first letter of the word should be in capital. This is about the class. Now let's understand what is an instance. An instance is a real object created from a class. If a class is a blueprint, as I told you, class is a blueprint, then an instance is the actual house built from that blueprint. An instance occupies memory and holds real data. Each instance has its own data. Yeah. In this example, we create a person class, then we create two instances which are Alice and Bob. Even though both come from the same class which is the person, but they store different names in the memory. That's why here if you print alice.name, you will get Alice. If you print bob.name, you will get Bob. That is about the instance. Now let's understand the difference between class and instance. As I told you, class is a blueprint and the instance is a real object created from that class. And class, it exists only once in a memory, but here we can create multiple instances inside a class, and it contains the unique data in each instance. Let's talk about instance variables and methods. The most important idea here is data independency. This means that each object has its own data and changing one object does not affect the others. Here, what is independent state? Every instance maintains its own copy of instance variables like self.age. So if we modify data of one object, it has zero effect on any other object created from the same class. And what are instance variables? Those are defined using self dot that particular variable name. These variables belong to only one specific object. For example, Alice has her own age and Bob has his own age. And methods operates on self. What is it? Method always works on object that calls them. I call p1.greet means self. The keyword self automatically becomes p1. That means the method uses Alice data, not Bob's data. And let's see the code. Here we are creating two objects, P1 for Alice and P2 for Bob. Initially Alice is 20 and Bob is 25. We increase only Alice's age using P1.age plus is equals to 1. Now Alice becomes 21 but Bob stays 25. This clearly shows that each object stores its data independently. Now let's see how we can create multiple objects from a single class. This is where object-oriented programming becomes really powerful. Scalability. In object-oriented programming, we are not limited to just one object. From one single class, we can create any number of independent objects. Each object maintains its own state, meaning its own data. And independent data. For example, here we are creating three-person objects, Anna, Ben, and Ken. Anna's age is 19 and Ben's age is 22 and Ken's age is 21. If we change Anna's age, it doesn't affect Ben or Ken at all. This proves that every object stores data separately. And using collections, just like numbers or strings, we can store objects inside lists or dictionaries or sets. Here we can loop through objects. That is about the multiple objects and how can we create multiple objects in a single class. And these are some common beginners mistakes. Please make sure that you should not do these mistakes. So please go through this slide, and these are the main things that you have learned in this overall session, like what is a class means the blueprint, what is an instance means the object, how the data isolated among the instances, and what is the use of self parameter, how can we use self parameter. That is all about the concept class and instance. Yeah, till now we learned the difference between a class and an instance using object-oriented programming. Now let's try to understand HackerRank problem and try to solve it. Yeah, here the task is write a person class with an instance variable age and a constructor that takes an integer initial age as a parameter. The constructor must assign initial age to age after confirming the argument passed as an initial age is not negative. Yeah, because the age should not be negative. If the negative argument is passed to initial age, then the constructor should set age to 0 and print age is not valid, setting age to 0. And here, additional to that, we need to create two methods which are year passes and AMIOLD. Here, year passes method should increase the age instance variable by 1. And AMIOLD method has three conditions in it, which are if age passed to initial age is less than 13, we should print your rank. And if age is in between 13 and 18, we should print you are a teenager. Otherwise, print you are old. These are the three conditions that AMIOLD method will do. And this is the task. In HackerRank, they by default gave us a loop, which we need to pass year passes method through it. Here they gave us the range till 3. So the year passes method will increase 1 by 1 loop. So they gave us 3 means they increase the age by 3 in year passes method. Like yeah, let's try to write the code. First, we'll check the age is negative or positive. If initial age, see here, write the same thing over here. If initial age less than 0, we need to set it to 0. Self-dot age is equals to 0. And we need to print it This is not valid, setting is to 0. And in the else statement, self dot age is equals to initial age. Yeah. And now in AML method, we need to write three conditions which are less than 13, age less than 13, age in between 13 and 18, and the else statement. Yeah. If age self dot age less than 13, print your rank. Elif self dot a self dot age is in between 13 and 18 means 13 less than or equals to and less than 18. Print for a teenager. And else statement is to print your old. If the initial age doesn't satisfy the both conditions over here, if and elif, then it will go to else statement and print your old. And the print statement should be as it is that they has given in the question. So copy and paste it here to avoid the output differences and errors in the output. Now in year passes method, we need to increment the age by 1. Self dot age plus is equals to 1. That is it. Here check the self spelling. Now let's run the code and check the output. Yeah, we got the correct output and the problem got solved. I hope you understand the difference between class and instance in this session, and also how to define the class methods inside that class and how to use self method, init constructor, everything. Thank you so much, and if you find this video very helpful for you, please like and subscribe to intelKeen Skills. Thank you.